Ever feel like the internet is one giant game
Yeah.
of red light, green light, trying to get work done from like 5 different places, and every time you connect, it's password here, verify your identity there.
Oh, tell me about it.
It's exhausting.
Hmm.
And that, my friend, is where SSE or Security Service Edge comes in.
It's true. Work has totally shifted. I mean, it used to be we were chained to a desk, but now it's almost like this nomadic experience.
Right.
And as you said, it creates a real challenge when it comes to security.
So today's deep dive, we're tackling SSE. We're going to figure out what it is.
Okay.
And more specifically, how Cisco is looking at this whole new world of digital security.
Okay.
And to do that, we're going straight to the source.
Love it, yeah.
Cisco's own website for that,
Insider perspective.
Insider perspective, exactly. And what they're saying is that in today's world, it's not enough to just protect the corporate network, right? They want to protect users and resources anywhere work is done.
Yeah, that's a big statement. I mean, it's almost like they're trying to redefine what a security perimeter even is these days, right?
Right. They've got this whole infographic on their website because even Cisco knows a visual aid is helpful when you're trying to explain something this complex, right?
Well, and they're not wrong. I mean, trying to wrap your head around all these different concepts, visualizing it can be super helpful. Essentially, what Cisco's talking about here is what they're calling a hyper-distributed environment.
Okay.
So imagine a company where, a lot of people working remotely, they're all using their own devices, accessing data from all sorts of different cloud services. I mean, that's a lot of potential entry points for a hacker.
Okay, so hyper-distributed environment basically means potential security nightmare.
Pretty much, yeah.
Got it. But seriously, this is where things get interesting, especially for those of us who aren't, cybersecurity experts.
Exactly. And, if you think about it, in the past, we used to rely on things like VPNs, right?
Right.
Create a secure tunnel back to the corporate network.
Yep.
But now that applications and data are everywhere, that model just doesn't work anymore. You've got to secure access to all those resources, no matter where the user is or what device they're using,
And that is where SSE, with all its fancy acronyms, comes in.
All the acronyms.
ZTNA, SWG. It's enough to make your head spin. But don't worry, we'll break it down.
We don't want you pulling a muscle trying to keep up with all this jargon.
Exactly. I have to admit, even I was a little lost in acronym land for a minute there. So let's start with ZTNA. What's the deal with Zero Trust Network Access?
Okay, so think of it this way. ZTNA is verifying every single attempt to access the network or application.
Sure.
Every single time. Like having a super strict bouncer at the door of your digital workspace.
Okay.
And not just at the front door, but at every single room you try to enter. Every single time.
Okay. I'm getting some serious trust issues just thinking about that bouncer.
Sure.
But in the digital world, that's probably a good thing, right?
It is. It's assuming that no user or device can be trusted by default, even if they're already inside the network.
Okay, so we talked about ZTNA. That's our super strict digital bouncer. But what about that other acronym I threw out there? SWG.
Ah, yes. SWG, or Secure Web Gateway,
Yeah.
that's another crucial piece of the SSE puzzle. So if ZTNA is our bouncer, right?
Right.
Think of SWG as the security checkpoint you go through before you even reach the door.
Okay. I'm liking this analogy, so walk me through. What's happening at this security checkpoint?
So essentially, SWG is acting as a filter between the users and, the entire internet, right?
Okay.
It scans all incoming and outgoing web traffic. It's looking for anything malicious and blocking those threats before they can even reach your device or the network.
So it's like having like a really, really good spam filter, but for like everything on the internet.
That's a really good way to put it. And you know what? SWG, it's constantly evolving because it has to keep pace with the latest threats. It uses things like URL filtering, malware detection, and even intrusion prevention systems to keep you safe.
Okay, yeah, that sounds like a pretty essential tool, especially in, as you said, this kind of like Wild West digital world we're living in. But, let's talk about how Cisco is actually using all of this stuff.
Yeah.
They have this whole solution called Cisco Secure Access, right? And it's like their big answer to the SSE challenge.
Yeah, it's a pretty central piece of their security strategy these days. And they make some pretty big claims about what it can do, right? It
Yeah.
can deepen protection, simplify the user experience, streamline IT operations. I mean, they're going for it.
Right. It's like they're speaking directly to every IT manager's wish list, right?
Exactly.
But let's unpack that a little bit.
Hmm.
What does it actually look like to deepen protection in this new hyper-distributed world?
So for Cisco, it's about moving beyond that traditional like perimeter-based security model that we were talking about, right?
Right.
So instead of just focusing on securing the network itself, they're really looking at how do you secure access to individual applications and data.
So it's not about keeping, like, the bad guys out of the building, but it's
Right.
more like, even if they get in the building, like, what can they actually get their hands on?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Cisco Secure Access uses things like identity-based access control and device posture checks
Okay.
to just make sure that only authorized users on trusted devices, the right people, can get that sensitive information.
Okay, so that's the deepen protection part. But they also talk about simplifying things for the users, right?
Right.
So how does Cisco Secure Access actually make things simpler? Because usually when I think about security, it usually means more hoops that I have to jump through, more passwords to remember. So how are they making it simpler?
That's the dream, isn't it?
Yeah.
Make it secure but simple. It's a balancing act for sure. But Cisco's approach is really centered around this idea of a seamless user experience.
Okay.
So think, single sign-on for all your applications,
Okay.
consistent security policies no matter where you're connecting from,
Right.
centralized management for IT.
Right.
The goal is to basically make security invisible and frictionless for the end users.
That makes sense. Yeah, because no one wants to, like, wrestle with a million different logins or, like, security questions just to get their work done.
Exactly.
But I imagine there's also benefits for IT teams, right? Like on the back end.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's where the streamlining IT operations comes in.
Right.
Cisco Secure Access is designed to give those IT teams a centralized platform where they can manage those security policies, they can monitor for threats, respond to incidents. The idea is that they spend less time on these tedious manual tasks, and then they have more time to focus on those big picture strategic security initiatives.
Okay. So it sounds like Cisco Secure Access is trying to check a lot of boxes.
Yeah.
But you know me, I always like to kind of like dig a little deeper.
Of course, yeah.
So what are some of the maybe potential downsides or like challenges that, Cisco doesn't really put in, like, big bold letters in their marketing materials?
Right, right. That is such an important question. And it's something that any organization that's considering SSE needs to really think about carefully.
Right, because it can't all be sunshine and roses.
Yeah.
Right, because it can't all be sunshine and roses, right?
Well, one thing to definitely consider is how complicated it might be to actually deploy something like Cisco Secure Access.
Right.
Because you're talking about integrating like a whole bunch of different security technologies, right?
Right.
And then on top of that, you've got to manage policies across this distributed environment.
Right.
It's not as easy as just plugging it in and, everything works perfectly.
Right. Right. Because, like, every company has their own IT infrastructure.
Yeah,
Exactly. Like their own way of doing things. That's not like one size fits all.
Exactly. And that brings up another really important point, which is integration with existing systems.
Right.
So if a company's already got all these other security tools that they're using,
Right.
they really need to make sure that whatever SSE solution they go with, it's got to,
Work with what they got.
Yeah, it's got to work with what they got. It's got to integrate seamlessly at least as seamlessly as possible, let's be honest.
Yeah, that sounds like it could be a real headache.
It can be a nightmare.
Okay, so integration is key.
Yeah.
What else? What other, like, potential, I don't know, downsides or challenges should we be talking about?
So this is something that often gets overlooked when you get really excited about shiny new technology.
Okay.
But, we got to talk about the human element.
Oh, you mean like getting people to actually use this stuff?
Exactly. User adoption. Because, even if you've got like the most amazing cutting edge security tools out there, if your employees don't know how to use them or why they're important,
Right.
it's not going to do you a whole lot of good, is it?
It's like having a state-of-the-art security system, but you leave the front door unlocked.
Exactly. So training and education, that's huge.
Right.
You've got to make sure all your employees understand SSE and how it works.
Okay, so training, user awareness, all that's got to be part of the plan.
Oh, absolutely. And I think another piece of that human element is control, right? When you start relying on a cloud-based solution like Cisco Secure Access,
Right.
you're basically saying, okay, I'm going to trust you, third party, with a big chunk of our security.
Yeah, that's a big leap of faith for some companies.
It is,
Right.
which is why it's so important to really vet any potential provider.
Okay, yeah.
Look under the hood, understand their security protocols, what their data privacy policies look like, all of that.
Right, because you're essentially handing them the keys to the kingdom, right?
Exactly. And while a company like Cisco, they're going to take security seriously,
Right.
it's still something that every organization needs to be aware of and comfortable with.
Okay, so we've got potential deployment issues, we've got integration challenges, and then there's the whole human element that we just talked about. And, oh yeah, this whole idea of control in the cloud.
Right.
It's like a lot, right?
Right.
But that's kind of the point, I think, of doing these deep dives.
Absolutely.
We really want to peel back all those layers, give everybody listening a 360-degree view of these topics, because they're not simple.
Totally. It's about arming people with knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Giving them the context they need so they can make their own informed decisions.
Exactly. Because, I mean, let's be honest, SSE, it's a tool, right?
Yeah.
It might be a powerful tool, but it's still a tool.
It's a means to an end.
Exactly. And it's up to each company to decide, is this the right tool for us? How do we use it to actually meet our needs, right?
Yeah, it's not one size fits all, and it's not a magic bullet.
Not a magic bullet. But definitely an interesting, piece of this whole cybersecurity puzzle that's always evolving,
Oh, for sure.
and something that I think we're going to be hearing a lot more about.
Oh, absolutely. This is a space that is rapidly changing. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Well, on that note, I think it's time for us to wrap up this deep dive into the world of SSE and what Cisco's doing in the space. Hopefully you have a better understanding of what SSE is, why it matters, and some of the things that you need to be thinking about if you're considering this for your organization.
And remember, this is just the start, folks.
Yeah,
Keep asking questions.
keep learning.
Stay curious.
Because, like we always say, the future of cybersecurity is really on all of us. We've got to be informed, stay engaged, and be willing to think critically about these technologies that are shaping the world around us.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Until next time, stay curious, stay secure.